Guess who's back with another giant project? Join me and learn how to crochet this huggable pumpkin, the coziest make for the coolest seasons to come. Let's get started. The huggable pumpkin is a free pattern by the brilliant Kate Eastwood, which we've linked in our description below. It's written in UK terminology and I'll be going through it in this video with US terminology. The yarn used on the pattern is Paintbox Yarn's Wool Mix, super chunky, and it is super lovely and squishy, but I'll be using 2 strands of the Paintbox Yarn Simply Chunky, which is 100% acrylic with an 8mm crochet hook. This is a more affordable option, but it's still just as lovely as the wool mix. I'm using 2 strands because it's finer than the wool mix and I still want to get a nice and chunky pumpkin. I need 8 balls in shade Blood Orange, and you can get away with using 1 ball in shade Pear Green and split it in 2 for the 2 strands. But I've ordered 2 balls in this shade just to be safe. I can always use any remaining for another lovely project. I'm using around 800 grams of stuffing. You can reuse stuffing from old pillows at home if you like. You will also need some pipe cleaners, some scissors, a stitch marker, and a large yarn needle. If you want to use the exact materials that are in the pattern, go ahead, and you can still follow along with me until the end. Remember to check the description below for links to materials. Before we get started, keep in mind that if you are working with 2 strands, like me, that means you'll see double the amount of loops and ends when working up your stitches. Treat your 2 strands throughout as if they were just the one to avoid confusion. We're going to start with a slip knot. Hold the tail of your yarn on the left hand, and you're going to make a loop by bringing the working side of the yarn over to the left side of that tail. And then you're going to complete your slip knot by bringing the working side yarn again under and up through that little loop. And you're going to pull that right up to complete your slip knot. And you can just attach that to your crochet hook, pull the working side to adjust the loop to your hook, and you're ready to start your pattern. We're going to start with some foundation chains, and the pattern asks us to chain 46. So to make a chain, all you're going to do is you're going to yarn over. So with the working yarn, you're going to yarn over your hook and you're going to bring that through the loop that's further down on your hook. So there's 1 chain. And again, yarn over the hook and pull through the loop further down, 2 chains. And again, yarn over, pull through the loop, 3 chains. I'm going to continue this until I have 46 chains in total. For row 1, starting in the 2nd chain from our hook, we're going to do 1 US single crochet, that's 1 UK double crochet in each chain until the end. So to make 1 US single crochet, which is a UK double crochet, into the 2nd chain, we're going to insert a hook into that 2nd chain. We're going to yarn over the hook and we're going to pull up a loop from that chain, and you should have 2 loops on your hook now. And to complete your first single crochet, you're going to yarn over again and pull through those last 2 loops. There's your first single crochet. And again, into the next chain, you're going to insert a hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and you should have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through the 2 loops. And there's my 2nd single crochet done. So I'm going to continue that into every single chain until the end. So that means I should have done 45 single crochets until the end, because remember we started from the 2nd chain from our hook. So I'm going to go ahead and finish my single crochets into every chain until the end. At the end of every row, we need to remember to chain one and to turn to prepare us for the next row. So we're just going to continue to work in single crochets. So for row 2, we're going to start making our single crochets into the first stitch here. So as you can see, this stitch has this little chain with the 2 legs at the top. So not the chain you just made for the turning, this chain here, we're going to insert our hook under those 2 little legs of the stitch. Ooh. We're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops to make your first single crochet of row 2. So again, into the next stitch, under the 2 little legs at the top of that stitch, we're going to go under that, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. So I'm going to continue this until the end of the row. So I've reached the end of row 2 there. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn. So you're going to continue to work single crochets into every stitch until the end, chain 1 and turn from row 3 to 8. So I'm going to continue to do my single crochets in every stitch until the end, chain 1, turn, until and including row 8. And I'll meet you back here when I've done those rows. I'm at the end of row 8, so I'm going to chain 1 and turn. For row 9, we're going to create our first ridge of the pumpkin. And to work our ridge, we're going to do our single crochets, but we're going to do them in the back loops only of each stitch. So you're going to work your single crochet as you usually do, but you're going to work them on the back leg of your stitch. So insert your hook into the back leg of your first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. You should have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops to create your first single crochet through the back loop only. And you can see that the front loop is left there, and that's what creates your ridge along your work. And this will be more visible when we've done a couple of more rows. So I'm going to show you that again. So into the next stitch, you can see those 2 little legs of the next stitch. You're going to insert your hook under the back loop of your stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And again, next stitch, hook under the back leg of the stitch. And remember, you're working with 2 strands. If you're working with 2 strands, you're going to have 2 strands there on your back leg, just to avoid confusion. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. So I'm going to continue to work my single crochets through the back loop only of each stitch until the end. I've reached the end of row 9, and you can see my ridge along my work there, and you can see all those loops, the front loops of your stitches, all left unworked to create this 3D little ridge. So again, at the end of every row, I'm going to chain 1 and turn. So now we're going to go back to working our single crochets as we were doing before. So for row 10 to 16 and including row 16, we're going to single crochet in every stitch until the end, chain 1 and turn, working again under both legs of every stitch. And I'll meet you back here at the end of row 16. Row 16 done. Now all you have to do is repeat rows 9 to 16 a further 12 times, and this will give you a lovely large rectangle for the body of your pumpkin. I'm actually going to stop here and show you what to do when you run out of yarn. You're going to start your next single crochet as you normally would. So hook through the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. So instead of using this strand to yarn over and pull through your last 2 loops to complete your single crochet, you're actually going to add a loop of your new set of strands onto your hook. So just a little loop onto your hook, and you're going to pull those new strands through the 2 loops all at once. And you can see there you've attached your new set of strands, and then you can just ignore the old set, just put it to the side so it doesn't get confusing. With your new set, you can just continue to do your single crochets as usual. Once you've finished crocheting your large rectangle, you're going to finish off with a very long tail at the end. So cut off a long tail, and to finish off, we're going to yarn over and you're going to pull that tail right through the loop on your hook to finish. Right through. And you're going to pull that to tighten and to finish. And we're going to use this long tail now to sew up the side seams of our pumpkin. So we're going to fold our rectangle, making sure that the wrong sides are facing together, and we want to meet the shorter edges of our pumpkin together, and we're going to sew this seam shut now. To sew these 2 shorter edges together, you're going to thread your yarn needle with that long tail, and we're going to treat this seam that we're sewing closed as if it were the last little ridge down our pumpkin, like the others we created when we were crocheting. So this means to sew these shut, we need to first take our yarn needle, and you can see here the very last row that we crocheted, those single crochets, we're going to work our stitches under the back loop of those stitches and into the foundation chains at the beginning of our pattern. So you can see here our first little space from our foundation chains. We're going to insert our needle up through that first space to create our first stitch, and you can just pull that right through to make your first stitch. And again, your next stitch, you're going to insert your needle into the back loop of your next stitch and up the next chain space from your foundation chains. And you're going to pull that right through, and that will create your whip stitch, closing those seams together. So I'm going to show you one more time. So under the back loop only of your next stitch and up through the next chain space in your foundation. And pull that through to make your whip stitch. So you're going to continue that same technique all the way down your seams until you've closed that shut. So I'm going to continue and I'll meet you back here when I've completed that. If by the end of sewing those two shorter edges together you still have a decent amount of yarn left on your needle, you can use this to create a running stitch along the edge at the bottom of your pumpkin. So what you're going to do is you're going to insert your hook down and up the edge of your work, down and up. And you're going to continue that. Do a few, pull the yarn through and continue along the edge of your work. Doesn't have to be precise. So you're going to continue to do that along and around until you meet where you first started, because then you're going to pull this running stitch to gather the bottom of your pumpkin. So I'm going to continue to do my running stitches all the way around until I meet where I started. So I've met where I've started, so you can simply pull your yarn to gather the bottom of your pumpkin. And then once you can't pull anymore and you still see a little hole there at the bottom, so just pull as much as you can, try not to snap your yarn. Then you can simply just create a few stitches with the remaining yarn at the bottom of your work to close that hole shut. So just make a few stitches across the bottom and pull to close that hole. Gonna make a few more across the bottom here. Again, it doesn't have to be super precise or neat because your stitches will all be hidden under those gathered stitches. A few more. You can open it up a bit so you can see what you're doing a bit better. Still see a little hole here, so I'm going to go up across with my needle to make sure that's nice and tightly closed. I'm going to go again. So I can see that's quite secure there, no holes at the bottom. So I can just insert my needle to the inside. I'm going to pull that to the inside and just secure with a knot. So just go under some stitches to make a loop and then go through that loop to make a knot to secure that nice and tightly. And you can just trim that to finish. Before we start stuffing our pumpkin, you'll notice you're going to have a few of these ends on the inside of your work from when you ran out of yarn and started again with some new strands. So we need to weave these in so that they're secure and your stitches don't come apart when you've finished your pumpkin. So what you're going to do is you're going to thread your needle with these ends, and each time you're going to insert your hook under the single crochets on the inside of your pumpkin, just along those single crochets, under the loops of the surface on the inside of your work, under a few of those, and you're going to thread your needle through, and then you're going to come back under the loops you came from, but you're going to miss the last loop you went under, and you're going to continue back under the same loops to secure the end. And you're going to continue this backwards and forwards as much as your ends allow. So I'm going to go back again one more time. And that should be enough. And then once you're happy with that, you can trim that down and then continue the same thing for all of your ends on the inside of your work. It's time to stuff your pumpkin. Don't fill it all the way to the top, leave some space, because now we're going to close this top bit of our pumpkin. I'm actually now going to use a cotton Aran for this, as I find it a little bit stronger and easier on the hands when pulling tightly. But you can continue with the yarn you use to crochet the body of your pumpkin. There's not a problem. So to create your running stitch with a new piece of yarn, you're going to cut a nice and long piece of yarn, and you're going to insert your needle anywhere at the top of your pumpkin. Just insert it, and then you're going to create your running stitch along the top bit of your pumpkin until you meet the end where you started. So I'm just going to continue to go up and down my stitches along the top edge of my pumpkin. So leave a generous tail at the beginning there for pulling, and I'm going to continue this all the way around. Then you can just pull these two ends to tighten the hole at the top of your pumpkin as much as you can. And then when you can't pull anymore, you can tie these two ends together with a knot. So just pull that closed and make another knot. I'm gonna knot it one more time just to secure it. And then you can actually finish stuffing the pumpkin using the little space you have at the top. Make sure your pumpkin is nicely stuffed all the way around. Then to close this little space, again, you're just going to thread your yarn needle with one of the ends you used to tie the running stitch. And again, you're just going to insert your needle across that space a few times until that space has been closed. So I'm gonna do that until I'm happy with the closure at the top of my pumpkin. And again, it doesn't have to be precise or neat. Once the little hole at the top is closed, you won't notice any of these stitches that you're making. So you can just go ahead and freely do your stitches until the hole has closed. Then you can just tie that end with the other one that you created from the running stitch. Make a knot and secure that. And then you can just go ahead and trim that down. Next, to make your pumpkin look more realistic, we want to create those lovely indents you see on the surface of a pumpkin. So to do this, you can cut long pieces of yarn and you're actually going to tie them around the pumpkin. So just place the middle of your yarn end underneath the pumpkin and then bring the two ends back up and follow the ridges you created when you were crocheting the body of the pumpkin. So you can see there, my yarn is following the line there, and on the other side, it's following this ridge here. So then what you can do is, you're going to meet those two ends together at the top, and then all you're going to do is you're going to tie these together at the top. So just tie them at the top. And when you pull those two ends sideways, you can see the lovely indents starting to appear there. So when you're happy with your first indent along the body of your pumpkin, you can go ahead and secure this with a knot at the top so it doesn't come apart. So just knot that. I'm going to knot it 2 times. So there's once, twice, and then you can just go ahead and trim that down at the top of your pumpkin. Nice and easy. Look at that lovely 3D shape you get. So I'm going to continue to do this all the way around using new pieces of yarn until I'm happy with my pumpkin shape. See you in a bit. Indent's done and my pumpkin is really starting to gain some personality. I didn't tie yarn over every single ridge. After all, pumpkins are not exactly symmetrical or perfect, so I wanted mine to look as organic as possible. Let's move on to the pumpkin leaf. In the green, and again I'm using 2 strands for this, we're going to start with a slip knot. And we're going to begin by chaining 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And for row 1, starting in the second chain from my hook, I'm going to work 1 single crochet in each chain until the end. So into the first, into the second even chain from my hook. Going to make 1 single crochet and single crochet in every chain until the end. So now at the end of this row, I should have 5 stitches. And now I'm going to chain 1. So at the end of this row and every row, chain 1 and turn. From here, we're going to start increasing stitches on both sides of our rows to start shaping the bottom of our leaf. So to increase, for row 2, we're going to work 2 single crochets into the first stitch. So into the first stitch, 2 single crochets, 1, 2, and 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and into the last stitch, we're going to work 2 single crochets. Oh. 1, 2. So there you've increased by 1 stitch on each side. So now we have 7 stitches done on row 2. So again, we're going to chain 1 and turn. Now that you know how to increase, keep following the pattern from rows 3 to 6, increase as stated, and I'll show you what to do next. At the end of row 6, I'm going to finish off. And now with the right side of the leaf facing up, I'm going to join back the yarn into the 5th stitch from the right side. So with your hook, you're going to insert your hook into the 5th stitch from the right. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Insert your hook into the 5th stitch. And then to join your yarn again, you're going to, with your new strands of yarn, attach a loop onto your hook, and you're going to pull that through the stitch, and you're going to chain to complete the join. And now I'm going to work 1 single crochet into this same stitch where I done the join. So into the same stitch, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 for your first single crochet. And now you're going to do a further 6 single crochet. So 1 single crochet in each of the next 6 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that means you should have 7 stitches at the end of that. And I can chain 1 and turn. So you can see here, by joining further down the previous row, it created these first set of spikes or points in the leaf. From rows 7 to 9, you're going to again increase as instructed in the pattern to make the next section of the leaf. Meet me back here when you've done that. So at the end of row 9, again, I'm gonna finish off. And I need to join again with the right side facing up to create the next section of my leaf. So I ended on row 9, and this is an odd number row, so this means that I ended on the back. So if I turn to the front, again, I need to join back into the 5th stitch from the right. So the same way you did for the previous section, you're going to insert your hook into the 5th stitch from the right. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Insert your hook into the 5th stitch and join as you previously did. And again, I'm going to work 1 single crochet into the same stitch where I joined. And now I need to work a further 4 single crochets. So I need to do 1 single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I should have 5 stitches by the end of that. Chain 1 and turn. For row 10, I'm just going to work 1 single crochet in each stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again for row 10, I should end with 5 stitches. I'm gonna chain 1 and turn. From here, we're actually going to start decreasing now to make the last point at the top of the leaf. For row 11, we're going to start with a decrease. So to decrease your stitches, we're going to do a single crochet 2 together. That's a US single crochet 2 together. If you are working in UK terms, that's a double crochet 2 together. So to do a single crochet 2 together, you're going to insert your hook into the first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and instead of finishing that single crochet, you're going to repeat that into the next stitch. So insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. And there you can see you're going to have 3 loops on your hook. And to complete your decrease and your single crochet 2 together, you're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops all at once. So you can see there that you've worked under 2 stitches, but they share 1 loop at the top. So you've decreased by 1 stitch here at the beginning of this row. So to continue with row 11, it asks us to do 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and now we need to do another decrease on the last 2 stitches of this row. So we're going to do another single crochet 2 together. So insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. And now you should have 3 loops on your hook. And to complete your decrease, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops all at once. So now you've got 3 stitches at the end of that. Going to chain 1 and turn. For row 12, you're going to start with a decrease again. So insert your hook into the first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Yarn over, pull through all 3 loops all at once. So you've just decreased 1 stitch. And to end row 12, you're simply just going to create 1 single crochet into the last stitch. So no need to decrease at the end of row 12. 1 single crochet. So now you should have 2 stitches at the end of row 12. Chain 1 and turn. Row 13 is the very last row, and all we need to do is do 1 decrease to finish off. So into these 2 very last stitches at the top of our leaf, we're going to do a single crochet 2 together. So insert your hook into the first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Insert your hook into the last stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and to complete your very last decrease, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops all at once. And you can see that we've reached the very top point of our leaf. So all we need to do now is finish off. I've actually just woven in all my ends of the leaf to do the next bit. We're actually going to work the edge of our leaf now, and I didn't want those ends to get in the way while I do those. So you can go ahead and weave in your ends, and then when you're ready, we're going to join our yarn again in the center at the bottom of our leaf. So if you remember correctly, our first row started with 5 single crochets. So in the middle stitch, we're going to insert our hook with the right side of our work facing up, insert our hook into that middle stitch, and we're going to join as we've been doing. And into the same stitch where we joined, we're going to make 1 single crochet, and then we're going to continue to single crochet up until the first leaf tip. So here you can single crochet into the next stitch at the bottom of your work. Ooh. And now when you're working diagonally to do the edge of your work, you can work your single crochets in between the rows. So my next single crochet will go here and so on. Between the rows, you can see that there's these little spaces between the rows, and you can just work your single crochets up until you reach the first tip of the leaf. There's my last single crochet there. And now into the tip, the first tip of your leaf. So you can work into this stitch here, the first single crochet of that row here that you did. You're going to work 1 single crochet into this stitch, and now to continue the tip of your leaf, you're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and slip stitch back into the second chain from your hook. And this will just make your tip for the edging. Oh, let me show you that again. So chain 2, and then into the second chain from your hook, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through the chain and the loop on your hook all at once. And then you can just continue to single crochet up until the next leaf tip. So here you can see that we're not working diagonally again, so we can just keep working into our stitches. So here we can continue to the next stitch here. So single crochet into that next stitch, and so on. There's my last stitch here, working horizontally. And again, we've reached a diagonal part again of our leaf. So I'm actually just going to work a single crochet into this space here. Doesn't really have to be super precise. And then work in between rows until the next stitch. So I'm going to work into this space and continue up until the next tip. So you can see here I've reached the next tip again. So in the second tip again, we're going to work one single crochet. You can see that space here. You're going to work one single crochet into that tip. And again, chain 2 and slip stitch into the second chain from your hook to make the tip. Oh. Try that again. Insert your hook into the second chain, yarn over, pull through the chain and the loop on your hook all at once, and so on. Again, I'm going to continue up to the top tip of my leaf. So continue to single crochet, horizontally, and again we're working diagonally now to the top tip of our leaf. So single crochet between rows. My last single crochet on the diagonal. And now in the stitch at the very top tip of the leaf, we're going to work one single crochet, we're going to chain 2, slip stitch into the second chain from our hook, and this time we're going to single crochet into the same stitch at the top of our leaf. So there's half of my edging done there. So now you're just going to continue to single crochet down the other side of the leaf, working the same pattern that you did on this side. So you're going to meet here where you did your very first single crochet of the edging. When you meet the very first single crochet of your edging, we are going to chain 9 at the bottom of the leaf to make the stalk of the leaf. So from here, we're going to do chain 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And now starting from the second chain from the hook, we're going to slip stitch all the way back up to the base of the leaf. So starting from the second chain from your hook, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through the chain and the loop on your hook all at once. And you're going to do that in every chain until you reach the base of your leaf. There's my last slip stitch. And what I'm going to do here to finish off, I'm actually going to make a slip stitch into the very first single crochet I made on the edging. So I'm just going to insert my hook into that stitch. I'm going to yarn over, pull through the stitch and the loop on my hook all at once. And then I can just go ahead and finish off. You can see that lovely little stalk there. I'm going to finish off. Next I'm going to work the little veins of my leaf. And usually to do the veins, we do something that we call surface crochet. And this just creates little chains on the surface of the leaf to create the veins. So to do this, I'm going to start with the middle vein of my leaf. So I'm just going to work all the way, but not until the very top. I'm going to insert my hook at the base of my leaf, just above the little stalk. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach a loop of my strands onto the hook, and I'm going to pull the loop up to the surface on the front of my leaf. And now to make your little chains on the surface of your leaf, what you're going to do is you're going to insert your hook into the next space. So we're going to be working in the holes, in the spaces between our rows. So into the next space above this one, I'm going to insert my hook into that next hole above. And if I turn to the back, you're going to yarn over your hook and you're going to pull that up through to the front and through that loop on your hook. And you can see that's made a little chain on the surface of your leaf. So again, you can continue up the next space. So insert your hook, make sure you're going in a straight line for the middle vein. So I'm gonna insert my hook into this next space here between rows, turn. Once you get a feel for it, you don't really need to turn, you can just go ahead and yarn over at the back of your work. So yarn over your hook and then pull that through to the front and through the loop on your hook. And there's my second little chain on the surface of my leaf. So I'm going to continue up. It might be easier to work sideways in this case. So I'm going to continue up with my little chains. So I'm going to insert my hook into the next hole, yarn over at the back of my leaf, and I can have a feel at the back. I don't really need to turn my work, and pull that through to the surface at the front and through the loop on your hook, and so on. You can see once you get a hang of that, it becomes super fun and quick, and it's a lovely and effective way to add a 3D element to your work. I'm going to continue that. I think I'm going to work just one more So I'm not going to work to the very end. And then once you're happy with that, so that's my first vein done, I can go ahead and just finish off. So cut your yarn and you can pull that right through to the front. You can see here I've used the exact same technique to make my other 4 little veins, and you can start and end wherever you like. It's a very freeing technique, and once you've done those, you can attach your ends that are in the front of your work onto your sewing needle and transfer them to the back of your work ready for weaving in. So once you've transferred all of these ends to the back of your work, you can go ahead and weave all of your ends just like I've showed you before. I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and I'll be ready to make my last little pumpkin bits. For the pumpkin stalk, we're going to work in a spiral and in rounds. The pattern asks us to start with a magic ring, but I actually prefer to start with some chains and then turn that into a ring. If you want to use the magic ring method, you can click on the link that's in the pattern and follow our handy video tutorial for that. So I'm going to begin with a slip knot, and I'm going to chain 2 to begin with. And to turn these 2 chains into a ring, I'm going to create a slip stitch into the very first chain. So insert your hook into that first chain, yarn over, pull through the chain and the loop on your hook all at once. And now for round 1, we're going to work into the center of this ring. Round 1, it asks us to create 3 single crochets into the center of this ring. So you're going to insert your hook into the middle. So there should be a little hole at the middle of your ring. You're going to insert your hook into the middle. You're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, and yarn over, pull through 2 loops to create your first single crochet. And you're going to create 2 more. 2, 3 single crochets. And what I'm going to do here, so at the end of every round, I'm going to mark the very last stitch that I made to track my rounds and to know when to stop and start. So I'm going to put my little stitch marker here at the top of my last stitch that I just created of round 1. And now we're ready to start round 2. So for round 2, it asks us to work 1 single crochet into the first stitch of those 3 single crochets. And now it asks us to create a stitch increase into the next stitch. So again, we're just going to work 2 single crochets into the next stitch. One, 2. And for the very last stitch of round 2, we're going to make 1 single crochet into the stitch with our stitch marker. That marks the last stitch of the round. So we're just going to insert a hook into that stitch with the stitch marker and create our single crochet. And that's round 2 complete, and we should have 4 stitches at the end of this round. So if we count, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, we can transfer our stitch marker up to the last stitch of this round. So round 3, it asks us to create 1 single crochet into the first stitch, and a stitch increase into the next stitch. So 2 single crochets into the next stitch. 1, 2. And now we're just going to repeat that one more time. So we're going to create 1 single crochet in the next stitch and a stitch increase in the very last stitch with our stitch marker. So 2 single crochets into this very last stitch. So 1, 2, and there's round 3 complete, and we should have 6 stitches by the end of this round with those increases. I'm going to transfer my stitch marker again to the top of the last stitch of this round. And now for rounds 4 and 5, it asks us to simply just single crochet in every stitch of those 2 rounds. So we should end with 6 stitches at the end of each of those 2 rounds. So I'm just going to pop my yarn tail inside the top of the stalk, just so it's not in the way. And I'm going to do my single crochet in every stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've done round 4. I can transfer my stitch marker and I'm just going to repeat that again, single crochet all the way around for round 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and my very last stitch, 6. And again, I can transfer my stitch marker up. So you can see the top of my little stalk start to take shape there. And I'm gonna keep following the pattern and increasing as instructed from rounds 6 to 15. See you in a few. So at the end of round 15, we should end with 15 stitches. And for round 16, and this is our final round, we're going to be working in US double crochet, that's UK treble crochet, and into the back loop only of our stitches. So the pattern for round 16 is as follows. Into the first stitch, we're going to create 1 US double crochet, that's 1 UK treble crochet. So yarn over first, and we're going to insert our hook into the back loop only of our first stitch. We're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, and we should have 3 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And there's our first double crochet. And now in the next stitch, we need to create a stitch increase. So we're going to work 2 double crochets in the next stitch and into the back loop only. So yarn over, we're going to insert our hook into that next stitch through the back loop only, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and another double crochet into this same stitch into the back loop only, yarn over, hook through, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So we're just gonna simply repeat this all the way around up to our stitch marker. So we're going to work 1 double crochet into the next stitch under the back loop only, 2 double crochets in the next stitch under the back loop only. And you're going to repeat that all the way around up to the stitch marker, and we should end with 22 stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So I completed round 16 and I ended with my last stitch being 1 double crochet into the last stitch. So what I can do now is I can remove my stitch marker and I can actually go ahead and slip stitch to the beginning of the round. So I'm just going to insert my hook into the beginning stitch of the round, yarn over, I'm going to pull that through the stitch and the loop on my hook all at once. And then I can just go ahead and finish off. And I'm actually going to leave a generous tail when finishing off so I can use it later for sewing the stalk onto my pumpkin. Gonna cut a long tail and I can go ahead and finish off. And there's my lovely stalk done. Only thing missing now is our beautiful curly tendrils for our pumpkin. So for my longer tendril, I started with a slip knot and I just chained 25 chains. And now we're going to, starting from the second chain from the hook, we're going to work 2 single crochets in each chain all the way until the end. So into the second chain from my hook, I'm going to insert my hook into that chain and create 1 single crochet and another single crochet into the same chain. And I'm going to repeat that into every single chain until the end. So you can see here by creating 2 single crochets in every chain, it created this sort of curly or spiral effect for the tendril. So then we can just go ahead and finish it off. And let's move on to our shorter tendril. For the shorter tendril, I started with 20 chains, and starting in the second chain from my hook, I'm going to work 2 slip stitches into each chain until the end. So insert your hook into that second chain. You're going to yarn over and you're going to pull that through the chain and the loop on your hook all at once. And you're going to create another slip stitch into this same chain. Insert your hook into the same chain, yarn over, pull through the chain and the loop on your hook all at once. So you're going to repeat that 2 slip stitches into each chain until the end. One, 2. Can go ahead and finish off. And all my little bits are ready to sew on to my pumpkin. Join me in the next bit and I'll show you how. What I'm going to do now is take my pipe cleaners. So I've got around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pipe cleaners. I'm going to fold them in half and twist them a little and I'm gonna insert that into the stalk. And you can kind of spread them out at the bottom. And that lets you give your stalk a little bit more of a curved, organic shape. And you can play around with that shape anytime you like, even after the pumpkin has been finished. I'm just gonna keep it like that. And then what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna actually pin all my bits to my pumpkin in place, and this just makes it easier for when you're sewing it down. So I'm happy with this placement, so I'm just gonna play around with it a bit. And I'm gonna insert my leaf and my 2 tendrils underneath, so the tip of them underneath the stalk, because I'm gonna sew the stalk onto the top of the pumpkin, and I'm gonna sew along the way. I'm gonna sew these little bits together along the way when I'm working my way around. So I'm gonna just pin those in place. It's looking so lovely and realistic. Can't wait to see all of the ones you'll be making. It's so worth it. And my last tendril here on the right. And I'm just going to pop another pin here. Then I can just use my long tail that I left from when I finished off my stalk. And I'm actually just going to use one end. There's no need to use the 2. Gonna thread my yarn needle with that. And I can simply just go around each stitch on the edge of my stalk and create a whip stitch. So go under the surface stitches of the pumpkin and through the stitches on the edge of my stalk, and just create a whip stitch all the way around. Making sure my stalk is being stitched nice and securely to the top of my pumpkin. So I'm gonna continue this all the way around. So you can see when you reach these little bits that you need to sew in along the way, you can just literally continue the same stitches, making sure you catch the pieces, the pumpkin and the stitch on the edge of your stalk. So just go up through the stitches of the pumpkin, up through the stitches of your little pieces, and back up through the stitch on the edge of the stalk, and so on. You can continue that with all your other little pieces until you meet your very first whip stitch of the round. I've whip stitched all the way around, and then I can just tie my 2 ends together to secure my stitches. And then I can actually just thread my needle with those 2 ends. And I can hide them under my stitches of the stalk. So I'm just going to go under the stitches a few times, and I can just go ahead and trim that down to finish. And there's my giant huggable pumpkin done. Isn't it gorgeous? Time to make a hot drink, put your feet up and cozy up to your new squishy make. I can't wait to see all of your incredible pumpkins. If you enjoyed this video, give us a comment, give us a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe for more. Happy crocheting!